Minutes after, why don't we go ahead and get started? I want to welcome everyone to today's conversation. We're really happy everybody took the time to join us. I know it's a time of many Zooms, so the fact that you chose to spend the afternoon with us makes us very happy. We're grateful for it. My name's Jeff Green. I'm the CEO of the Santa Barbara City College Foundation, and I get to serve as your MC today. And some of you have joined us for many of these over the last year. We've done quite a few conversations. This is pretty special today. We are at about 5 years from the inception of the SBCC Promise. So we thought it was a good time to report back to you, our community, about what we've learned, what impact it's having, and to introduce you to a few of the folks that are key to this effort around our community. So I'm very happy to be joined today by my colleague, Sergio Lagunas. He is the guy responsible. He is the manager of the SBCC Promise. And he will be joining me in presenting a good bit of this data and some stories and really an update on what's happening. We also have with us one of our current Rockstar SBCC Promise students, Sinai Miranda, who is going to tell us a bit about what she is up to and what the Promise has meant to her, and really what it's like from a student perspective being with the SBCC Promise. And last but certainly not least, we have Veronica Loza, who is a proud parent of not one, but two SBCC Promise students. And actually 3 SBCC students, maybe a 4th. We'll talk about that later. But I want to welcome Veronica for joining us as well. And so we are going to spend our time really giving you an update on what the initiative has meant and where we think we're going and what we're learning. So that's the important thing here, is that this is really an experiment in real time. As we like to say, it's something that we believe will constantly be evolving to make it as useful as possible to our community. I'm going to take us through just a few minutes of history about how we got here, and then I'll turn it over to Sergio. And I want to start really going back to 2015. Some of you may remember the moment when you first heard the term promise. That was about the first time I heard the term promise. And it was because at the time, the Biden administration had started to talk about the promise and college promise as a national idea, and it was floated as a potential model for states across the country to support our community college students. At that time, we got wind of that idea and started to look around our neighbors and our landscape and our world of community colleges. And I ran into 3 colleagues who had all started promise efforts of very different types in California. There was one at Ventura College, just to our south and east, and actually the first one in the state of California. There was one at Long Beach, a little further south, Long Beach City College, and then the most recent at the time was Cuesta College, just to our north. So we had some neighbors who had already done some experiments, and they all were pretty different. And of course, the challenge was SBCC Promise was the term promise meant almost anything, and therefore it was hard to pin down what a promise was. And so that was really the beginning of this second wave of promise. Prior to that, the very first promise was Kalamazoo, Michigan, 2005. And in the 10 years between then and 2015, there were about 35 around the country. So we began to really talk to our colleagues and ask questions and try to learn from the lessons that others had already learned before us about what works, how should you do this, can you do this on a larger scale? And that was our charge, our hope was really to make that possible. The way we did that is we reached out to our community, and many of you who are on this session today were part of some of those conversations to say, really, we wanted to know 3 things. We wanted to hear responses to the idea of could we make SBCC completely accessible, all hard costs paid by our community for all of our local students? You know, what would that look like? What would that accomplish? Could we get support? Secondly, what were we missing? Why was it more complicated than we thought? What should we be thinking about? And third, we asked everybody if we can make it work. Would you be an advocate for it? Would you promote this? Would you help support it? We were very happy that after 120 of those conversations, we got all yeses. So batting 1,000. I know I've got Sinai here as a softball athlete, so I can use a baseball metaphor. Is that what that was? Okay. Anyway, so after that response, we decided it was worth going ahead and launching this. What we did, and I'll bring up some slides here to show you. We really modeled it off of what people who'd come before us had learned, as well as our best data that was available at the time. And so the idea was that if we're going to launch the SBCC Promise, we want it to be the best. We want it to be a leader. We want it to push into new territory. We want to learn something from it and go beyond the minimum. So in fall of 2016, that's what we did. We decided to launch this ambitious effort to make our community's college accessible to all local students who recently completed their secondary education within the district. Essentially, if you live in the district and or went to school in the district, you were eligible. In that time, in those 5 years, roughly 5,000 students have benefited from the SBCC Promise. It quickly became one of the largest in the nation, and it was comprehensive, and we'll talk about what that means, but it paid for all required fees, books, and supplies for 2 years, and it was done entirely with private donations, and that also set it apart. So the foundation built, designed, funded, and leads this effort completely with the support of our community of private supporters, many of you, and thank you very much if you are one of those folks who's with us today. One of the things I like to say about the Promise, it is not a scholarship and it is not a program. It goes beyond that. Yes, it of course includes that, and it is commonly understood to be a scholarship or a series of scholarships. It's a program in the sense that it is something we do for our community, but it really goes beyond that. It's meant to be a structural change in how we access our higher education. So it is a community-supported initiative of the SBCC Foundation. It's really a systemic change to how we access higher education in our community. And we describe it in 3 primary ways. One is that it's comprehensive. It covers all required books, fees, and supplies. Most Promise efforts cover a piece of those, but we decided that all the evidence said, all the research suggested the best way was to do the full scholarship, the full coverage, pay for all supplies, and that's what we propose to do and have done now for 5 years. It is robust in that it covers 2 years. Most of the early promises were 1 semester, maybe 2 semesters, maybe tuition only, maybe a book grant that goes with it that only went so far. And we decided we, again, would go the full length there. And then open access. And it is not restricted based on past academic performance or on demonstrated need or anything else. And that was important because, again, the data suggested that if you offer it to your entire community, and all students are welcome, all families are welcome, that it has an additional effect of people really feeling like it is theirs, like it is ours, we own this together. And that's certainly how we feel about it at the SBCC Foundation. This is our effort for our community on behalf of our community. There are really, in addition to simple residency and being part of the community, there are 4 things that we ask our students to do. And this is what we ask. We are basing all of these on the research. Be a full-time student. All the research says that is by far the best chance of success. It's correlated with being full-time. We know that's a challenge. This is one of those areas where we're continually trying to figure out how can we open the door wider to other students, but we incentivize that. We ask students and require students to take at least 1 academic counseling session each fall and spring semester. More is better, but at least 1 each time. Again, the research said if students have somebody they can go to lean on, and we, of course, have quite a system of academic counseling already in place at SBCC, that we make sure that students take advantage of it. We want to make sure they remain in good standing at SBCC. Again, that is relying entirely on the college's systems and definitions, and we make sure that that's the case. And that's what Sergio and his colleague Wendy Aguilera spend a lot of time just making sure students are in a good spot, and if they're not, what do they need? And we do a lot of that kind of check-in and support. And then finally, apply for financial aid. It does not matter if you get it or not. It matters that you ask. And this is part of one of the challenges in community colleges. You may know this. Our systems of financial aid are really set up for 4-year institutions. And so a lot of our community college students don't get the full benefit of financial aid for a wide variety of reasons. So one of the things we ensure they do is at least ask. And so that helps also make sure that if they do have other funding that they have access to, that they get that as well. So that is what we set it up for, all based on the research. And finally, this is the punchline, and this is why SBCC is really a special place. Our community is a special place, and the foundation was in the right place. We were able to take on what is really a $2.5 million a year commitment. And that is why in many places around the country, even though that data was widely available, almost no one else really went this far, and that's because it's an expensive proposition. So we had to have the confidence that our community cared enough about this, valued it enough to support it, and that we could raise those dollars, again, privately raised dollars, to make it possible. And sure enough, that is what we have found, is that we're constantly fundraising. We're fundraising 24/7, 365. But it was working, and people are stepping forward, and from large grants to small gifts, it's all there. One of the things you will see, though, on this, and I'll point this out before I hand it off to Sergio, is that the biggest cost is actually the books and supplies. And this is the thing a lot of people don't realize about community college, is that although California has done a fantastic job at keeping tuition fees low, That 1.285 million, I'll put my cursor over it here so you can see it. This is really where the bulk of the cost goes, and that's because that is the expensive stuff. There are some supports for fees, but books and supplies are really, in the end, especially for certain majors, the biggest load that people have to carry financially. So essentially, what we said is we will cover all this as a community if young people want to take advantage of it and can commit to being full-time students. Can work a few less hours, and then our community will step up with the dollars to help sure that everyone has a chance to go wherever they want to go. And that's the other beauty of it. It really, we are supportive of students wherever they want to go. If they're in a CTE program, transfer program, if they're taking classes to get to that next step, whatever it may be, that's the support we offer. So again, we're grateful for all the support you've offered to make this possible. 5 years on, I'm going to stop my share, and I will go ahead and share the microphone now with Sergio Lagunas, the manager of the SBCC Promise.
Thank you, Jeff, for explaining the history and a little bit of background information on the SBCC Promise. I'm always grateful for that information to be out in the community. As a local community member and a lifelong resident of the 805 area, yes, I grew up in Oxnard, California, went to Oxnard Community College. I am a product of the CC system in this state, and I am proud of it. And I recommend always to rely on your community college, as we do with the SBCC Promise. And with that comes evolution in terms of what we do in this local initiative. And yes, as a reminder, it is based on students who live in the area, and if you graduate recently from high school or the equivalent. So again, I just like to remind students and community members out there, we accept students who are homeschooled, private schooled, court schooled, public and private and alternative schools, as long as it's in the area. And as well as we continue to evolve this initiative, we have always looked at the 4 requirements that we ask of students, and we have seen an increase of students going in and applying for financial aid, mainly because we ask students to go in and make sure they complete that so we can maximize their opportunities as local students. Also, with the academic counseling, we have been doing continuous training with the academic counseling department, making sure that they know and we are on the same page on not only the requirement of students meeting with an academic counselor, but also what technological tools and resources we can provide to students and inform them that this is something that not only benefits them, but also it's an onboarding milestone in the whole process of being a student for the 2-year commitment, as well as being a full-time student, and of course, being in a good academic standing, equally important at SBCC, so they continue to benefit from the high quality education at SBCC. Being that we like to accommodate students, we've actually started an accommodation for those who receive services from the Disability and Student Services Department, also known as DSPS, whereas students who are not able to do a full-time enrollment due to a learning disability or other barriers recognized by that office, we accommodate them by saying you don't need to do full-time equal to 12 units. They can do any units and still qualify and be eligible to continue in the SBCC Promise. In fact, I do have some numbers, not a lot, in terms of that. We did start in 2016 with only 15 students taking advantage of the accommodation, and then slowly has picked up throughout the years. And currently in the spring of 2021, this current semester, we have 113 students who are eligible and taking advantage of this accommodation at SBCC. So as you can see, students are truly being aware of the different resources that we have available. And as we continue to evolve, we'll probably be adding more accommodations for those students facing barriers that we wouldn't have known unless we had some data to back that up, including the whole appeal process. So once students know that they've been dismissed or removed from SBCC Promise, meeting 4 core requirements, we do have the opportunity for them to be reinstated or added back, being that they submit an appeal. And we have made that a lot easier and faster of a process for students to use. And it's really for us to look at the data and see what barriers they're facing and how we can correct that so we can be more student-centered, student-friendly, student-facing as an initiative of a college promise and at SBCC. And with that, we have also communicated how students can connect with me or Wendy for the SBCC Promise, and by providing bilingual materials, providing outreach events such as Noche de Promesa de SBCC, completely Spanish event, and also the equivalent to Promise Night, SBCC Promise Night that was done this February. Not only that, but also doing a new student orientation, although online. We've been doing that for about 2 or 3 semesters continuously so that new students know exactly what they need to know, the tools and resources available to them, not only as SBCC students, but also participants in the SBCC Promise. And of course, continuously visiting and revising our website and frequently asked questions so that we are up to date and student facing so that students can have everything they can at their availability. And lastly, but not and equally important, I mean, we also have accommodated students through online appointments, being that we cannot do in person during this last year and a few months over. We do have that available to students to communicate via phone, email, the traditional ways, and of course, an online appointment where they can meet with me and really go over anything they have questions about and how to best take advantage of the resources that we ask them to use, such as academic counseling, financial aid, and of course, enrollment services. Those are my updates in terms of what SBCC Promise has been looking like in the last few years since I've been here, since October of 2019. And I would like to take it back to Jeff so we can continue with this presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Sergio. Let's go ahead and I'll pull the slideshow back up. We're going to look at a few more bits of data here. And I see Rubai, good to have you here, my friend. Yes, we will share these slides. When we get to the Q&A, we can talk more about them as well. So let's look at this next slide. So this is our actual enrollment. What this shows really is the evolution of the promise. And of course, it was a 2-year commitment we made. So in that first year of fall 16 and spring 17, it was just that one cohort. These were students largely who graduated in June of 2016. But you can see by the next year, academic year 17-18, it essentially doubled. And that was by design. But each semester, there's a couple of patterns here that we're noticing. One is that fall is the larger of the two, generally speaking. That means we do lose some students from fall to spring. So that persistence level is one of the things we constantly are looking at. The other is that some students graduate mid-year and actually start in spring. So there is a net effect there of students coming in as well. You can see the plateau, though. We got up to about 1,700 students in the 2018 and 2019 academic years. And that was sort of where we'd leveled out. Now, that was wonderful news because when we launched the Promise 5 years ago, our best estimate based on all the data we could get from our districts and our K-12 partners was that we would probably have around 1,300, 1,350 students at a time. And in the end, it ended up being closer to 1,700. So that was remarkable. It made it one of the largest efforts in the country. Truly comprehensive. We felt like people did know about it. It was being talked about, shared with all families, counselors, teachers. But you can see what has happened during COVID. This last drop-off was pretty significant for us. And I know Sergio and I and our team and my board and all of us talk a lot about sort of what do we do next? And of course, the college is working at a big level on this as well. We've lost at one point nearly a third of Promise enrollment, and that's really concerning because of course there's a lot of reasons that can happen during COVID. We know that students who are already facing the greatest number of challenges, this was the thing that tipped many of them over the edge, so to speak. It brought them out of their higher ed path, and we're hoping that's temporary, but that's of course the big thing before us. Maybe Sergio, this is the time that you and I can share that the big news for the community is that come fall, we're going to offer, it's really a no-fault insurance model. Please come back, no matter what the reason is. If you left the Promise without completing your 2 years or whatever commitment we have to you, you can come back this fall. If you left during COVID for any reason, we want you back because we really want students to complete and continue on. And that was the whole point of this. It's not meant to set up new barriers, new tests. This is about supporting all students to get where they're going. So please spread the word. Fall of 2021, if you are a student who was an SBCC Promise student that stopped for whatever reason, fell out of the Promise during COVID, come back. No questions asked. We want you back. And so that's something we're going to start talking a lot about. Sergio, you want to share some other thoughts of just what you're seeing with enrollment this fall? Because I know you're tracking this maybe minute by minute, maybe daily.
Yes, of course. It in conjunction with what has been happening in the national trends and the California community college system, just as you pointed out, Jeff, we have seen a dip in enrollment, and most of it has been from students who are perhaps in the lower income brackets in the community and are facing more barriers, especially during the pandemic. That is a reality we must always be aware of, and not assume that students are not choosing to enroll at SBCC for other reasons. Some students are even communicating to me on a regular basis that online education may not be the best or the most suitable form of college level classes that they can participate in. So they're really opting out of these last 3 semesters from spring 2020 through spring 2021, or even somewhere in between. Not only that, but also students are communicating that they're working full time and are not able to dedicate 100% of their time and their effort to get the best grades possible, which is always the educational goal for them. And although all that is going on, at the same time, some students are coming in back into the community from four-year universities who are seeing the SBCC Promise as a better opportunity than going back to their four-year university that they went straight out of high school, and seeing the benefit of saving for 2 years at their local community college, which is in fact real college, where they can really add savings to their family, and eventually they can choose to either return to their four-year university, or they can choose a newer dream school that they can embark on and perhaps have more flexibility, as it is the common pathway at a community college.
Absolutely. And that's the big challenge. So we invite you to please help us spread the word. We're going to continue to reach out and hope to bring students back, and of course recruit a large new class in the folks that have graduated during COVID. Speaking of graduating, this is just a snapshot of give you a sense of where students are coming from. One of the things I said at the beginning, which we're really proud of, is this is truly an open access offering, and it's to all students. Now, most students in our region do attend one of the 4 comprehensive public high schools. You can see there that it's always a close race between the 3 in the Santa Barbara Unified District, Los Pueblos, Santa Barbara, and San Marcos. But Carpinteria actually has the highest percentage of its graduates coming to SBCC, and that's been true for some time. Slightly smaller school, but also a public comprehensive school. You would see above that the other programs, and I have to tell you, we learned a lot. Sergio's predecessor, Lucille Boss, was the first manager of the Promise, and she actually spent a lot of time just introducing us to some of these programs, because some of these are smaller homeschool programs or smaller schools entirely. Obviously, Bishop Garcia Diego, that's one that we know. The La Cuesta Continuation School, we have a relationship. Alta Vista, we have a relationship. One of the things I think is really important to note there is that SBCC is the adult high school. So these are students that didn't complete as young people, and they came back as adults, and they finished high school and then came onto the Promise. So that, again, it's really truly for everyone in our region when they complete. You can see the smaller programs listed at the bottom: Rincon, Anacapa, others. So it's truly for everyone, and that's a really important part of our offering and our belief that this is truly for everyone in our community. This is a complicated graph, but nonetheless, I will explain it. What you see there, the blue bar is the full-time student enrollment, and the orange bar is the part-time student enrollment. And these are all local students who are likely to be Promise eligible. So younger students coming right out of high school in most cases. I will move past this, but you can see there that every year we have over 2,000 students who are eligible for the Promise. This line graph, however, shows something that we think is really important, and that is that this goes back to 2010, if you look along the bottom axis. So for many years, a slight majority of students were part-time from our local younger student population, and a slightly smaller percentage full-time. In 2016, you can see where those two lines diverge pretty radically, and that was the introduction of the Promise. So that tells us that the incentive that we put in place to incentivize students to go full time really did work. And it got to the point where it was almost a 2-to-1 margin there. But then, of course, when you look at what has happened in just the last year, this is the concerning part, is that we know that a lot of students are dropping out of full time, which drops them out of the Promise, at least temporarily. They may stay enrolled, but they are definitely not enrolling full time. And this is because of the challenges Sergio mentioned about additional work or lack of work, or taking care of family members or young children, or any number of things. So this is where we're at today. And we believe the Promise can be a tool to get students back. And that's what we're going to spend a good deal of our time doing. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off the screen. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to hand it back to Sergio, who's going to introduce us to our panelists who are actually living this work, this effort, to share a little bit with us about what that means to them. So thank you again to Sinai and Veronica. Sergio.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. I do want to go ahead and introduce our student speaker. She has been really grateful and generous with her time, being that she's a very active student at SBCC. So let me introduce to you Sinai Miranda. She goes by her pronouns she, her, hers. Sinai actually grew up in the area and graduated from San Marcos High School. She is a current student at Santa Barbara City College, participating in the SBCC Promise. Not only that, Sinai is a student athlete and is a member of the SBCC softball team. She's really proud and happy about that. She is planning on transferring soon from SBCC to a California State University. She also enjoys taking walks on the beach. Who doesn't in this area? She has also agreed to share her perspective as an SBCC student on today's event. And now I welcome Sinai to the virtual stage. As you see her, she's excited. And I want to start out with a few questions for her. The main one is, what was your plan after graduating from San Marcos High School? As in, what motivated you to stay in at SBCC?
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm Sinai. And so right out of high school, I wanted to go to a 4-year college, and I was planning to go to University of Oregon. We actually went to go visit it too, but the tuition was $50,000, and I did not want to put my family through that. So I decided to look at CC, and my counselors were telling me from high school too, and I ended up coming here because of the Promise, and it ended up being the best decision I could have made. So I'm super glad I ended up coming to SBCC instead. Yeah.
Thank you, Sinai. The student athlete you mentioned to me, how did the SBCC Promise help with your experience?
So when I first came to SBCC, I was playing softball, working, and doing school full time. So the money I was making from work, I was literally just putting it in my savings. I didn't have to worry about paying for books or classes or anything. So it's really helped me in that way. And I'm grateful to have saved. My mom didn't have to worry because I live with her. She didn't have to worry. She could just save for my education when I transfer, because my whole goal was to transfer in 2 years, and I'm on track to be doing that too. So.
Yeah, talking about being on track, you mentioned to me that you enjoyed being a full-time student. Can you share how that full-time enrollment requirement in the SBCC Promise has been more of an opportunity than a barrier for you?
So the full-time requirement was definitely kind of hard at the beginning to get used to, but as I kept going, it was getting easier, and now I'm able to graduate with 61 credits, and because of the full-time requirement, or else I probably would have taken longer to finish. So it's definitely been a great opportunity instead of barrier.
Thank you for sharing that. And also, along
Mhm.
with that, can you share which department at SBCC has benefited you the most, or which one you have taken advantage of the most at while you are a student at SBCC?
When the pandemic first happened, I definitely was going to the tutors way more. And it was definitely a big help. Even over Zoom, they would help me and for my biomedical science class, and they would help me study and go through the study guide with me, and answer any questions I needed. So that was definitely the main source I used at SBCC, was the tutoring.
What would you say about the tutoring center that was so great? Was it the staff? Was it the availability?
Yeah, I was the staff, and like a bunch of them were students just like me, so they knew what I was going through. They they knew that I could be confused and would help me and explain it in different ways. So it was very helpful, and I could relate to them.
All right, I can feel you on that one.
Yeah.
I too took advantage of tutoring when I was a student, and I was a tutor myself. So thanks for that accolades. Continuing on, what has really helped you finish your graduation and transfer requirements in 2 academic years?
It's definitely my counselor. She's the athletic counselor, so she would help me specifically with like balancing softball and school, and she would make sure I was taking classes that I liked, but also required my um, requirements for my sociology degree. And yeah, and definitely like my parents' support as well too, and like them taking me to school whenever I needed to. And it's like 10 minutes away from my house, so it's it's been really great.
Okay, and not only with your counselor, but also you mentioned your family.
Mhm.
Um, how does your family feel about you being at SBCC and taking advantage of the SBCC Promise?
I'm My family is very grateful that I was able to spend more time with them as opposed to leaving 2 years ago, and definitely saving way more money. And my mom was just able to save more for when I transfer, because now I'm going to be transferring to a CSU and actually having to pay for the books and the fees and everything. So it's definitely been, the promise has been like a lifesaver for us.
Okay, you touched on uh, topics about your experience at SBCC, but
Mhm.
can you share about your hopes and dreams?
So I'm majoring in sociology, and love the professors at SBCC too. So with that made my experience 10 times better. And the small classrooms, I love that environment. So I have hopes of becoming a professor possibly at a community college or SBCC, and just helping students become more engaged, because it's really the teachers that do it for you, that help you learn and help you have fun while doing it.
All right. And in order to get there, you probably have some plans up ahead for short-term, long-term goals. Can you share a little bit about your plans after graduation from SBCC?
Um, I plan to transfer to either CSU Northridge or Cal State Long Beach, and maybe possibly pursue a master's degree after that as well. But I'm just taking it as I go, and I'm really excited to transfer, and I'm really excited that I was able to do it in 2 years, because that was my whole plan from the beginning, and it's been great.
And as a student athlete, you mentioned to me that you've been in there in that type of role for a long time. Are you going to continue as a student athlete when you transfer, or what's your plan?
I possibly will try to play for like a club softball team just so I can focus a little bit more on my academics because I have been playing softball for like 10 years now. So it's been a long ride. And I also wasn't going to play at CC, but I ended up doing it and it was the best decision because I made so many new friends from all over the California and it's been great.
Sounds like being involved on campus at a community college really pays off. And what else would you advise for students along with that? And any thoughts and consejos, as they call them, any advice on what to take advantage of once a student comes into SBCC brand new, not knowing anything about it? What would you say they should check into?
Just definitely make a good relationship with your counselors so they can help you and your teachers as well as when you can because they really help you and they really want you to succeed. And their office hours are always open. And I went to their office hours a couple of times too when we were in person. And I built like friendships with my professors and they're really just there to help you. And I would recommend the SBCC Promise to anyone because I'm really grateful for the experience looking back at it now. And
All right, any last words for students listening in or the community members?
I would recommend the SBCC Promise for anyone who is interested, and it's definitely a great opportunity to take advantage of because if you were born or live in Santa Barbara or anywhere around here, to take advantage of the opportunity because it is free college and it is still an education. And I have literally 61 credits to transfer with me when I go to my CSU, and it's all good. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sinai, for really sharing your true thoughts and feelings about your experience as an SBCC Promise student.
Thank you.
And now I would like to bring it over to the parent perspective. So today, not only do we have a stellar student, we also have a great supporter and parent of SBCC Promise students, Veronica Loza. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I have some questions for you as well.
Okay.
The main one, I just want to get your thoughts and feelings and really share some stories with us and our community members listening in. What would you say are your thoughts and feelings of the opportunity that is granted by the SBCC Promise for students wanting to attend SBCC?
Well, as a parent of this program of children, I have 4 children, and I know that's unusual in this during these days, but I have 4, and I have 3 adult children that have either already gone to SBCC and graduated and moved on, or have just finished SBCC Promise. And I have one that's currently enrolled in it. And then I have a 14-year-old that's about to attend Somerville High School. So I'm hoping the SBCC Promise is around in 4 years when he's done. I have to say that the incredible opportunity that the Promise has brought to the community, the children of our community, is outstanding. I think as it is, it can be extremely difficult to live in Santa Barbara because of the high rent district. So our workforce, sometimes finds it difficult to not only live here, but on top of that, to assist their children in attending college. And so to have this opportunity provided for our local children, I think is an incredible thing. And I think that's one of the main things that's really assisted, from what I see, not only us, but other families that I know where their kids have attended the Promise.
And you do mention that you have children that have participated in the SBCC Promise. what have you heard from them at firsthand, or what have you seen that has really changed the perspective of SBCC as an opportunity of going to a real college and going there for 2 years, covered by the SBCC Foundation?
It's funny that you asked that, because my daughter, who just graduated from SBCC this last year, just finished the Promise. And we were just talking about that because she's about to apply for her bachelor's in nursing and transfer to another school. And she was saying how grateful she was that she's able to have the Promise, because she's able, just like Sinai has been able to, save money, because she didn't have to worry about the cost of books and materials and fees. She's able to save that money that she was able to earn working, somewhat while she's attending full time. Also, all the credits that she's taking with her is incredible. So she'll be able to hopefully finish the next 2 years quickly, if not sooner than 2 years. The fact that she had the support from the counselors, the guidance that she received, she thought was great. The fact that, one of the requirements is that you speak to a counselor on a regular basis was really great for her, and it kept her on her path. And specifically last year, I think it was a difficult year for our world, our community. And I think the support she received from her counselors, so she was able to finish on time, was really good for her. So she's very, very grateful. And now my son is also in the Promise program. He graduated from Dos Pueblos last June. And again, last year was a difficult year for everyone, especially those graduating. Last year was, and now this year, but last year was just kind of this, shocking situation for our students across the board. He went from graduating from DP and also entering the Promise. It has been difficult for him because he hasn't known what it is to actually attend college like a normal student, right? To have the opportunity to be in class and see your professors in person. But I think one thing that have heard him say is that the support that he has received from the professors when he needs to talk to them, and from the counselors during this time. And he actually looks forward, he's about to finish, this year. He looks forward to the next year where he's hopefully will be able to attend classes in person. So he's looking forward to that college experience in that way, that personal college experience. But he has received a really good support system this last year at SBCC.
Yeah, I definitely understand fully that, as a student, you really want to have that presence of a faculty member, that warm body that's telling you all this wisdom and showing you how to read your textbook and everything that has to do with navigating the college system. And yes, some students are going in with their really modern perspective of online or distance education. And as we adapt and then go back to maybe a hybrid model, we don't know yet. Soon we'll see what is going to happen for fall 2021. And talking about transitions from high school to community college or four-year university, essentially higher education, what is your perspective about academic gap preparation in the high school level? And some students say, I tried so hard and now I have to go to SBCC, or I didn't try hard and SBCC is kind of like my second chance. What is your take on being fully academic prepared and going to what it's, ending the stigma of going to a community college, especially if there's an SBCC Promise in your neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and a true statement what you made with the stigma of it. Because my oldest son, just like Sinai, he was accepted at different schools. We looked at them and we thought, wow, $50,000 to attend a 4-year. And so in the end, he went to City College and then eventually to SBCC and eventually transferred to UCSB. And now he's 24 and he's extremely happy that he took that road. He took that route because he left UCSB with not the huge bill that you would typically have if you go to a 4-year. I think once my children saw that with him, my daughter and now my 19-year-old son, they, and he told them, this is the best. And then the Promise came on a year after he graduated from Santa Barbara High School. The Promise started and he was like, what? That's not fair. But, either way, I think that at first, well, one thing that I have to say that, or at least my children have heard and they have seen, is how great of a community college we have. SBCC, the reputation it has nationwide. We know kids, my daughter has made friends with young adults from all over the world that know about SBCC and are transferring or trying to transfer here. She's had a lot of friendships in that regard. So I think, given the reputation it has and what they've learned, is just, I think the stigma is not as much anymore as it used to be. Yes, I think our children like to receive those letters, or you've been accepted here and you've been accepted here, and it's great to have them. My daughter, even though she knew she was probably going to go to SBCC, applied to these schools just so she could get the letter to see that she actually got there, but then in the end ended up at SBCC. And now, as a couple of years have gone by, she says, God, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I actually spent $100 to apply for that school so I could just see if I made it, knowing that she already would have made it, either way. So it's a great school. And I think back to your question about what the schools promote, I really do feel that our schools, our high schools here, I've had a child graduate from DP and I've had two from Santa Barbara High. Both schools have done a great job of promoting the Promise to the kids, at least of what I've seen with the counselors, and really directing the kids in that direction, specifically if they're going to stay in Santa Barbara where they can't afford to go to a 4-year.
Yes, and with that, the premise is of the SBCC Promise that students don't have to worry about working over 20 hours a week, although that may not be the reality for a lot of families. Also, the expected outcome might be that students live at home and not have to pay upfront for housing, and they can take advantage of that not being part of their budget as a student. And overall, the cost of attendance really is reduced to a small amount, being that they only have to cover their personal expenses at that point. And being that opportunity exists in this community, and hearing it from a local student and a local and very supportive parent, it's important to note that, yes, there is a stigma of community college. It is a real college. Some professors teach at UC, CSU, or private schools and teach this very exact curriculum at the community college system in the same classes. And, it varies who succeeds in those classes. But either way, thank you for sharing today with our audience and community members and our panel on what is your perspective as a parent of an SBCC Promise student, or I should say students. But we would also like to give you the opportunity to provide your last thoughts on your perspective as a parent.
Well, I think, for those that are on listening right now, whether you're a funder or another parent or a student, specifically if you're a funder, I think this program, if we're able to keep it up for our local children, I think it's imperative. It's the future. It's what our children need, that support that they need to get ahead in life. Specifically now with these challenges that we are now facing, have faced and will face in the future. So I think it's a great program. I want to thank SBCC for allowing this program to become what it is. And I hope that it'll continue for many years to come. It's a great program.
Thank you so much, Veronica, and Sinai. Thank you so much for just sharing what it's really like and what you're experiencing there. We do have a few minutes, and there's some questions, and I want to tell folks, if you'd like to submit any questions, you can do it via the chat. But let me jump while folks are maybe submitting a few, and can be to any of our panelists. We'll direct them appropriately. But there's a couple in there, and I do want to say again, to the question that Rai asked, yes, we will share some slides. I'm happy to share any of these in the data. This is, like we said, an open kind of ongoing experiment, and we're constantly looking at that data. Two other questions that came through. One is if we have data on how many of our SBCC Promise students actually complete in 2 years and are ready. And I have to tell you, this is actually a tough one. And Sergio and I worked with the college on this. There's a great deal of work happening on the college side about improving their data systems. One of the things to know about our community colleges is they were really built as these really efficient educating machines. They just, I mean, that's what they do. There's really little else that they do. And that's the beauty of them, the elegance of them. And in this day and age, though, we're having to build up a lot more data systems. And so what we're doing right now at the college is starting to figure out ways to track that more exactly. What we found when we got that data originally in the first 2 years of the Promise is that it showed when a student may have left the Promise, but it didn't always show why. So we would have the sort of uncomfortable but often wonderful experience of calling a student who appeared to have just left the Promise, and they say, well, where are you? And they say, I'm at UC Berkeley. I've already transferred. All's good. And so, we have students that transfer early. We have students that come in with dual enrollment units and actually don't need the full 2 years. But we also have students that do 2 full years and then stay on for another couple of semesters to figure out where they want to go and to complete. So we know that the truth is all across the board. And we're going to continue to work on and report out that data as we can. The other question that came through was the question about what was very much in the news right now. And I mentioned at the outset that we were recognized nationally for this work when we first launched it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that story. So there was actually a contest that at the time, Second Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden, who herself, as almost everybody knows by now, is a community college professor in Virginia, had asked for Promise efforts to put together short videos kind of talking about what they do. So we got in that, and we actually got recognized as the national champions of that effort and invited to the White House to talk about this effort with folks from across the country. So we met a lot of our peers. And now, 6 years on, of course, the Biden administration is in the White House, and Dr. Jill Biden is back as First Lady of the United States and has also spent a lot of time talking about this. And in fact, President Biden has discussed putting it into the infrastructure plan potentially that we're about to see. So the bottom line is this, though. I would ask everyone not to get confused, even though that may happen. And I make no assumptions at this point. There have long been efforts at a state and national level to fund things like what they call an SBCC Promise. In no case has it ever included books and supplies. And I believe in no case will it. And that's why it's so important to note that the largest expense that we support with those private dollars are the books and supplies. So my answer to that would be, it is theoretically possible, if the political will is there, and I don't know that we might see a zeroing out of tuition costs and other fees. So that is possible. And frankly, California, as I said, did better than any other state over the last century at making that possible. But even if that were to happen, the largest hard cost of attendance, which is the books and supplies, would still be there. So I'd say best case scenario, if it happens over the next 2 years, what that means is that we'll be able to extend our Promise offering maybe another semester or a year. Maybe we'll be able to extend it to folks for a part-time basis. But the hard cost, the biggest one, will still be there. So it is both something I personally support, I know our foundation would support, the college would support, but it also isn't really quote unquote free college. In fact, that's a nomenclature I would encourage us all not to use, just because it's disingenuous. It's not free college, it would just be free tuition for that if it happens. So there's a lot more to the cost, we know that. And of course, the biggest cost is living expenses. And that's a whole nother level of challenge. And there are some experiments about full ride scholarships. In fact, you may have heard about the Pritzker gift that happened this last year, $100 million committed to some of our community colleges. and these would be for full ride scholarships. But even that $100 million over 20 years only offers that to just a handful of students because, again, the cost is so large. So those are some short answers to some longer questions, but we're always happy to talk about that. The question in the chat right now from old friend Elroy Pinks. How you doing, Elroy? Good to see you here. Are any new resource infrastructure been developed to increase rates of successful transfer, especially to UCSB or other UC or California universities generally? Santa Barbara City College has two really robust programs, but then also a whole lot of other counselors and support. So we have our transfer achievement program and our transfer center. And there are some things happening at the policy level to make that easier. And certainly you may have read about some of that, about making those transfers smoother, making sure more of our SBCC units are actually counted toward transfer to our other public higher ed in California. And I think the other big area is that we can always improve at the college level of what we can offer students to prepare and how to do that. I will say that one of the things we have introduced, Sergio was talking about adaptations and changes we're making, and one of those is that we are now offering to pay for the applications for some of our Promise students who need that help when they apply for transfer. So we are adding in additional benefits as we find them being needed and necessary. We have a couple more. Tom, thank you so much for your questions. The financial status of the Promise, how long can it continue? My answer to that is fairly similar each time, and that is it would be really bad to call it a promise if we then took it away. So the intention, and to Veronica's comment, will it be here in 4 years? Yes, the intention and the design of the program has been that this is, look at that, I called it a program even after I said it wasn't. And the design of the initiative is to go ahead and make this a permanent part of our college and our community. I think what will change is how it gets funded over time. How broadly it's offered. But at this point, it is required, again, millions of dollars every year to be privately raised. We have been both ahead of and behind that curve. So in full transparency, our first push, we actually raised a lot of money very quickly. There was a lot of excitement, but then like all things, it had its curve and its half-life, and then it faded a bit, and then we had to push again. And so that's where we're at. We're constantly asking our community of donors to support the Promise and really pay it forward. At this point, with 5,000 students in and thousands of families who benefited, we are going to be coming out and asking our community, if this was valuable to you, would you be willing to pay it forward for another family to do this? So it's all reliant on voluntary contribution, and that's truly what it has always relied on. The other thing I'll say about the financing side of it is that we learned early on that there was a collateral benefit really that we hadn't even counted on or even thought through, which is that by incentivizing full-time enrollment and the way that colleges are funded in the state of California, we actually were able to add money to the general budget of the college. So by getting more students to go full-time, the apportionment formula of how colleges are funded, that led to about $500,000 in additional funding for SBCC. So the money is leveraged not just for the students that benefit directly, but the college also benefits from it. And again, it's all given by private donation in our community. So thank you again for all who've done that. One other question I see here is an interest in developing leadership training and opportunities within the Promise. Students are our future. It seems like could be built in. Amen to that. I absolutely agree with you. And I think that is where we're at. I think we're needing to figure out what that looks like. And Sergio has done some wonderful work starting actually a Promise Club, engaging Promise students to tell us, because let's be honest, that's who knows. So we're gonna bug Sinai and thousands of her fellow students about this, but we really do need to know. We wanna know what helps. So I'm gonna stop there. Other questions for our panelists? We got a few minutes. We're a little after 5 o'clock. Any of our panelists have questions for each other? Anything burning that Veronica wants? We can just flip the interview here, and Sinai and Veronica can.
No questions. Great to hear about the next 4 years, though.
Yeah, and you know where to find me. I know where to find you, Veronica. You'll tell me if that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I want to share that one of the other things I didn't say in Veronica's introduction. Veronica for many years has led the programs at our housing authority in the city of Santa Barbara. And so I know in her professional life, she gets to see and has occasionally shared with me the benefits that she's seen of families that she works with. So thank you for that work as well.
Thank you.
I will say that, the moment is really interesting for us in this because there is this national attention on community colleges. And as Sergio has said many times, this is, I almost don't want to say, real college. It's like, well, of course, it's not only the real college, it's the best thing out there. This is way beyond real college. This is, we, of course, SBCC's nationally been recognized time and time again, outstanding faculty, and programs constantly being innovated and created. And of course, that's the marriage we have with the foundation and college. So many times it is the private support of the community to the foundation that provides the resources and the possibility of innovating and trying new programs and experiments. And the Promise is sort of the writ large example of that. But there's a lot of things that have happened at SBCC because of our community support. So I want to, again, call that out and say that if you want to learn more about that and you want to learn more about the foundation, all the other things we do, there's quite a bit that you can look at on our website at sbccfoundation.org. sbccfoundation.org. And there's a way to reach all of us there as well. I saw Peter Rojas has a question about scholarships. And Sinai, I don't know if you want to answer this directly, but were you able to apply for other scholarships or other kinds of support even while being a Promise student?
I just got a scholarship. I got the Louise Lurie Excellence in Athletics Scholarship. So that's going to be able to help me to pay for next year when I do transfer. But other than that, I didn't really apply for any because I didn't really need to. But yeah, I just got that scholarship. So that's great and going to be used.
Excellent. Well, so there's the answer right there. The answer is yes. The direct answer is yes, they absolutely can. And thank you for sharing that, Sinai. That's great news. So yes, students can and do apply for other financial aid. Again, what we're trying to do, it's not a last dollar program, meaning it's not that you have to use all your other financial aid first, and then if there's a gap, we do it. It's actually a first dollar program. We do this for all of the students. And then if they're also eligible for other funds, they're able to pursue those. And we think that's really important. Because so many other scholarships might provide flexible funding for living expenses. Many of our students are Pell Grant eligible. Many can pursue Cal Grants, and so there's other ways. And that's part of why we also build in the request for what used to be known as the Board of Governors fee waiver, now known as the California College Promise Grant, because we believe that students that are eligible for that they should have that and the promise. So it's not one or the other. But that's a great question. Okay, other questions? Jack Rivas, I thank you for your comments. I will definitely follow up with you about that, about leadership programs and such. We are, as you can see, we're constantly trying to figure out what to do best. We're learning as we go. We appreciate everybody who's helped teach us. We are students in this as well. And we have quite a community. There are now over 350 Promise efforts in the country. So we've really been at the vanguard of this last wave over the past 5 years. It's grown from 35 to 350. And we're proud to say that what we're doing is really still in the leadership, and we work a lot with folks across the country and talking about what that means. So. Okay, any last words? I think we'll go ahead and bring it to a close. Can I pick on you, Sergio, to add any final words before we close out?
Yes, of course. Always a pleasure to do so. I just want to point out that we do have an Instagram account for the SBCC Promise. Please follow us if you have access to that at SBCC Promise. So that is our username. Look us up. Always posting on there continuously for newly updated information and pictures. Please email me or Wendy. Our information's on our website. So a shortcut to get to our webpage on the SBCC Foundation website is sbccpromise.org, and that will redirect you to the right URL. And I just want to say thank you everyone for attending. And the SBCC Promises are, as pointed out by Veronica Loza, it's imperative for the community to have. And once you have something great like this, you don't want to lose it. So I also say thank you for all the funders and donors who have truly invested in their community through this process. To me personally, community college was a gateway for higher education, as high school preparation was not the best for me. But we have a great opportunity. Students come in with a clean slate unless they do dual enrollment, and you have an opportunity of a lifetime to go to your dream school through saving for those 2 years and the beginning of your pathway. I'm telling you, there's no greater opportunity. From the over 300 initiatives of a college promise programs out there in the United States, SBCC is one of the top ones, and for big reasons. And one of the best reasons is you, everyone who is tuning in, community involvement. That's what makes it so great. And thank you, Jeff, for making this possible, for creating this event, and for allowing Veronica and Sinai to really share their true and honest, authentic perspectives on their experience. Back to you, Jeff.
All right. Any final words, Sinai or Veronica, you want to share with the folks?
Thank you for letting us be part of this presentation. It's an honor to do it. It's the least we can do, at least I can do, for everything that my children have so far received from SBCC and the Promise.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I completely forgot to mention that when I was coming out of high school, I actually did apply to CSU Long Beach and I got denied. And now I got accepted and I'm gonna go there in the fall. So the SBCC was definitely a great choice for me. And I'm so glad I ended up coming and so thankful for the Promise. So thank you.
Excellent. Congratulations, Sinai. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, folks, so we're going to call it here. This has been recorded. It will be available and posted later on our website. Again, sbccfoundation.org, also sbccpromise.org. Either one will take you to more information. Thank you to Sinai Miranda, to Veronica Loza, and to Sergio Lagunas, and to all of you for joining us. That's what makes this community great. That's what makes this college great. And of course, that's what makes the foundation's work possible. So we're grateful for it. And we look forward to being in conversation with you again soon. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.